We're following breaking news out of Paris. This is the Cathedral of Notre-Dame. It is on fire. This is burning out of control.
The state of the Cathedral of Our Lady of Notre-Dame in Paris is perilous, and this won't be news to the French engineers and architects and decision makers there. I'm James McCrary. I design churches and cathedrals. It's probably helpful for people to understand that while the fire is out and the damage seems to be known, there's always a lot more damage than one can tell right away. Probably the biggest challenge that the building faces is that there's a very high degree of instability with the building because so much of its structural integrity has been removed by the fire. The roof has been burned, and that really had a whole lot to do with the structural integrity of the top portion of the cathedral. The fire began in perhaps the worst possible place, to begin right in the middle, right where all four roofs of the church cross and form a cross. The fire began right at that very intersection and spread horizontally in four directions, and also, of course, spread vertically up into that beautiful flesh, the spire, that surmounted that beautiful intersection. So the fire, if you think about it, really spread in five directions: north, south, east, and west, and also vertically. The cathedral roof structure stood for centuries. In fact, it's wood timber frame arranged in trusses, a triangulation of wood that allows the roof to remain very, very stable for very long periods of time. And then over the top of that were lighter pieces of wood that allowed then for the lead roof to be put down over the top of it. We think of a metal roof here in the United States, we think of copper, we think of tin. But traditionally, the metal roofs of the great cathedrals in Europe were made of lead. They're very heavy, but they last forever and ever and ever. But lead melts at a very low temperature, and it melted in a hurry, and once the lead had melted through, it allowed the fire to be fed by oxygen from the outside, and at that point, the conflagration was guaranteed for the entire roof structure. Sad thing to see, and also the reason why it went so rapidly. I'm amazed by how much of the original fabric of the cathedral church below the roof remains. The main of the stone vaults that span the interior and form the ceiling of the cathedral nave and the transepts and the sanctuary have remained intact. There is some damage and there is some loss to those vaults. Those vaults were not the roof, they were simply the interior ceiling. But they were made of stone, and because they're made of stone and tied into the side walls of the cathedral, they're helping to brace those side walls now. They're really the only things that are bracing the side walls now and keeping them apart from each other. The roof trusses previously did a whole lot of that work, and now it's solely on the shoulders, if you will, of those vaults. They have to protect those vaults. They have to remain in place until those walls are stabilized. The reportage, of course, is very, very quick and happening and lightning fast, and I think a lot of people want to have a lot of things to say. The reports early on were that all the stained glass windows were destroyed. Thanks be to God, that's not the case. So many of the magnificent windows remain. There has been some loss in the upper portions of the roof. That's to be expected, given the fire. The great spire that surmounted the roof of the cathedral at its intersecting, at its crossing, is really a magnificently beautiful construction of the mid-19th century and a masterwork of a great talented architect and restorationist named Viollet-le-Duc. Very, very terrible to see, but it is not 10th century, 11th and 12th century fabric, but it's a tremendous loss nonetheless. And perhaps the most absurd thing is that I've heard reported is that the crown of thorns was somehow installed way up outside underneath the roof in that spire, in that flesh. This is really the relic of relics of the Christian tradition, and no one in their right mind would have ever taken Jesus Christ's crown of thorns and placed them out of doors, up in the way up in the spire in the attic. Let's be optimistic about the state of craftsmanship and know-how, if you will, in the world today. The best teachers are the buildings themselves. The best recordation, the best example of how to build like they built at Notre-Dame is Notre-Dame.